Okay, check it out. These are all the tools and all the parts that you need to turn your Prusa Mini into a conveyor belt enabled part ejecting miniature factory. Here's the belt. This video will go all the tools and parts visually. There's a link below to a textual list and links to all the parts. So your first step is to disassemble the Prusa Mini bed. For that, you're going to need a T10 Torx driver. The bed uses some little fancy screws. They're quite tight on there, so I like the little T-cross. This one's from iFixit. For general tools, I love offset tweezers, and these are parallel jaw pliers, both good for holding nuts. Parallel jaw is especially nice where if you squeeze hard enough, it just stays put. Your nut doesn't go flying across the shop. We need both a 5.5 and a 5mm nut driver as well. Not different intentionally, just because of the parts I could acquire locally. Finally, you need 3 hex drivers, a 3mm, a 2.5mm, and a 2mm. The ones I have are all ball end. This is important for the 3mm so you can use it to tension the belt. It's a very tight shop, so it's hard to find a good tensioning system that would also not interfere with the printer. Now, on to parts. Or vitamins in old school rep talk. We need 8 M3 square nuts, 4 M3 by 15mm button head screws. The button head's important in this case for the smooth top surface. We need 6 M3 by 10mm long screws. There we go. And we need 2 M3 by 8mm screws for the motor. And 2 M3 washers. For the hold the bed on, we're going to use 9 M3 by 8mm flathead screws. These are replacing the Torx drivers from the original Prusa. I'd rather have longer screws to make it a little bit more sturdy, and I want to get away from the Torx bit, really. We have 6 female threaded hex standoffs. They're M3 thread by 10mm long. The original standoffs are 6mm long. We are raising the bed 4mm to make room for our belt. 6 will go on the top and bottom. We do not use the new ones in the middle. Well, that's where the belt will be, so we don't have a full standoff there. Finally, for the tensioning system, we need 2 M5 button head screws by 14mm long, so the tensioner works. And we'll also need 2 M5 hex nuts. You can see it in there. We're just using the screws to push the belt, the idler of part of the belt, out. You also have a 5/16 smooth rod. It's either 9 inches or 228mm long. You have a 7-inch 5/16 smooth rod, 178mm for the idler. We're covering the drive side with an EPDM sleeve, 5/16 by 7/16 OD. We use 2 5/16 brass bushings. And finally, 1 zip tie. For the printed parts list, we need to replace Prusa's original wiring cover with one that's about 2mm shorter. I just used their file, cut her off a bit. We're going to replace the U-bolt LM8UU clamps with printed clamps to make room for the belt. So those are the printed clamps. You can see the belt path is obstructed by the nuts on the U-clamps. We need to make sure that whole area is clear so that we have room for our belt to run. Where the smooth, or the button head tops come in. So the drive gear, we use 2 bed supports with the brass bushing holder. We have a printed shaft clamp. You can just buy these shaft collars, but I have some 3D printers lying about the place. The front drive gear is clamped on by 2 M3 by 10mm screws and square nuts. You can see the clamping collar here. Provides a very good tight seal. Stick her back down. These are the central bed supports to make sure that there's no bowing in the middle of the bed. Ideally, these be as slippery as you can get. We want to make the bed as rigid as possible, but without compromising the belt. There will be no force fit keeping it down except the belt itself when tensioned has a tendency to bow the center of the bed, so this counteracts that force. And finally, to hold the motor on, we have the motor mount. This is shaped just like the front of the printer. It has the indentations to hold our worm drive motor on there. Stick her right on. And finally, the drive gear. With the logo, this is on a D shaft, matching the motor. So we don't need too much tension on there, just a single screw to hold it on. The drive system does stick out a good bit. It's something I might want to work on in the future, but it's working fairly well for now. I do think it's sort of the part that could be most improved. The belt is a laser cut. This is 0.005 inch Mylar. The original belt was capped on film 0.02 millimeter, but I've tried this belt out on my older console with some success, so I wanted to try it for this printer. Finally, we got some PET tape to hold the belt on. We're also going to use that to smooth out some of the dishes. And we have a parts tray to hold all the original Prusa parts. I like to save these in case I want to revert the machine all the way back. That's about it. I know it seems like a lot, but the parts go in easily and the result is worth it.